Feeding our babies is supposed to come naturally. We see images of cooing babies and smiling moms and doting grandmas and expect that to be us. We don't see all the struggle that goes into every decision that seems so high stakes at the time. We don't expect all the leaking, the engorgement, the deciding to take a break. We don't expect all the judgment, whether we breastfeed or bottle feed or pump or don't. Or maybe we do expect all those things and it comes smooth sailing. But what I have encountered as a doula, a childbirth educator, and a lactation professional is that when I tell people what I do, the stories flow out naturally. And I love hearing them. I hope you do too. I'm your host, Lo. Welcome to the Milk Making Minutes. I started the Milk Making Minutes because I'm passionate about supporting breastfeeding people. But more importantly, I knew that hearing real people tell real stories would benefit both the storytellers and the listeners. I had this idea for 3 years before I launched. I asked so many people how I should begin, and Anchor came up repeatedly as the easiest way to launch a podcast. And I have not been disappointed. If you are passionate about a topic and have wanted to start a podcast, you can use Anchor to record and distribute your podcast. It's easy to use. You can use the editing tools right from the platform. You can distribute your podcast episodes seamlessly to listening platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts right from Anchor. And the best part is, it's free. And the tech support has been great too. Go to anchor.fm or download the app right to your phone to get started on your great podcast idea.
Welcome to the Milk Making Minutes. Kasondra, I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so I would love to start just by having you introduce yourself, anything that you think is relevant, as well as introducing your family, anything you want us to know about your family.
Sure. Well, my name is Kasondra. I live in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, and I am married to my wonderful husband, and we met in 2012. I have a 7-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, and boy-girl twin 3-year-olds. They just turned 3, so I forgot.
Wow. Okay. So I'm sure you have interesting stories related to feeding your babies.
I do. They're all a little bit different.
Yeah, so great. So before we actually get into that, I would just love to know what your exposure was to breastfeeding, baby feeding before you were pregnant.
Okay. So I have kind of a unique upbringing. I was birthed at home by my mom, and she was a midwife, and there were always pregnant people and breastfeeding people and just boobs out when I was a little kid. So breastfeeding was incredibly normal, but I would say there was a hint of the breast is best. Like, I just didn't even think I would ever choose formula because I grew up so much around breastfeeding and just feeling like not only that I would trust my body and know that I would be able to breastfeed, but just that it was also a better choice for my child. Not that I would say I felt bad about women that chose formula, but it just didn't occur to me that I would ever choose formula.
Yeah. And did you ever encounter people within your mom's practice, or did she ever talk about that?
I was so young in my memories that I don't remember that dialogue going on.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like sitting on my mom's lap and her having conversations with these women and being a part of them feeding their babies, but I don't recall the conversations that were taking place and whether they were about struggles or difficulties or anything to that nature. I feel like I was in my own little world because I realized my memories are from when I was about 3 to 5. I don't remember anything past that. Yeah.
Yeah. And your mom was a CPM, certified professional midwife. Is that right?
I believe so. She hasn't been practicing for about 20 years now, but she was one of the first midwives in Massachusetts. I'll have to ask her now that when we get off the podcast. Yeah.
And did she practice as a midwife before she had children or trained?
She did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you felt like you were exposed to breastfeeding as the norm before
definitely
you were pregnant. Okay. So then you met your husband, you said in 2012?
Correct.
And you eventually, I guess, at some point decide to start your own family. What was that like?
So I always wanted to be a mom from a young age. It was the thing I was looking forward to most in life. I think I actually went into a career thinking, well, this will get me through until I become a mom.
Oh, wow.
And so we actually started trying very shortly after we got married. And I didn't realize it, but we were actually pregnant at our wedding. I was actually a little worried because I was supposed to be on my cycle on our wedding. And I was like, wow, this worked out really well. I'm not. Like, I wonder why I'm so late.
Oh, wow.
I found out on our little honeymoon afterwards when I was going to bed at 8 o'clock at night and couldn't figure out why I was so tired and why my boobs looked so great that we were actually pregnant. And
That's
so it was funny, but we realized that my HCG was rising incredibly slowly, wasn't doubling properly. And I didn't know what any of that meant back then. I was just so naive. I was married, we were pregnant, and everything was going perfect. That at around 8 weeks, I started bleeding, and that was our first loss, which was very eye-opening and very devastating. And even at first, I was a little naive to what was going on because you hear, oh, bleeding can be normal. Even my mom, who was the midwife, said this can be normal, and it kind of became a reality when I noticed how much blood you're losing, that this is not normal.
yeah.
And the day that was happening, one of my best friends from college was getting married. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go to this. But I realized life goes on and I'm going to have the miscarriage whether I go to her wedding or not. And I actually chose to go to her wedding on this day. So I will forever remember being at her
Wow.
wedding and being so happy for her, but so sad at the same time.
I know. Yeah. The intersection of loss and
Yes.
celebration. Yeah.
So that pregnancy came as a really big surprise because throughout my 20s, I had what's called hypothalamic amenorrhea, where you don't actually get your period because you're exercising way too much and not meeting your energy demands. So your body actually shuts down your reproductive system because it doesn't feel safe. So I always kind of knew we would need a little bit of assistance to get pregnant. And what happened with that pregnancy is I had taken Clomid the month before just to see how my body responded to it. And I ovulated and it responded great. And I didn't take it that month for the wedding.
Okay.
But apparently I got pregnant anyways.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
after the miscarriage, we tried again. We got pregnant again. And we were so excited because everyone told us you'll never have 2 miscarriages in a row. One miscarriage can be normal, but it's not going to happen again. So I didn't know this. We carried on. We went to our first ultrasound at like 6-7 weeks. We saw a perfectly healthy heartbeat. Very excited. In around 10 weeks, I started not feeling my symptoms anymore. And my mom would tell me, oh, that's because you're almost out of your first trimester. This is so exciting. Let's go buy some maternity clothes. This was on my birthday, actually. This was February 1st of 2014. And my husband and I got married September 2013. So this is all happening. We had a miscarriage right after our wedding. And then this one is, February of 2014. I wake up one morning and I notice a little bit of spotting and I'm like, oh no, this is not good. At this point, I think I'm about 12 and a half weeks. And so my husband takes me to the ER, and even everyone at the ER is like, bleeding in pregnancy is so normal. I bled through my whole pregnancy. You're going to be fine. And they bring the Doppler in and they can't find a heartbeat. They bring the ultrasound machine in and the bad news comes. And I remember putting the sheet over my head in the hospital and just completely losing it, completely breaking down. So that was a little devastating. We went home after that and I completely renovated my kitchen. I painted all the cabinets. I was like, I need to take my mind off of this.
Yeah.
But
I am so sorry.
I mentioned the hypothalamic amenorrhea piece because I think in my 20s, I had this hint of I don't trust my body fully. because I wasn't quite sure it would be there for me when it came to making babies and breastfeeding and all of that. So this miscarriage in particular was interesting because I wasn't sure if my body would pass the baby on its own without medical assistance. So I didn't book my D&C until a week after we found out that my baby had passed. And I was trying to miscarry on my own at home. My mom was there supporting me, doing her midwife thing, giving me herbs to try to stimulate labor and all that. But despite bleeding all week, I still hadn't passed the baby. So I went in for my D&C on February 7th in 2014. And it's funny because I bring that date up because just this past February 7th of 2022 is when I was offered another D&C for this past miscarriage that I had. And I just thought them lining up on exactly the same day was incredibly serendipitous and strange.
Yeah. So many losses. And also so strange that you were told, oh, it will only happen once.
Exactly.
Because you hear so many stories of people who do so sadly suffer from so many losses.
It is true.
Yeah.
And I heard something that resonated so strongly with me that said that miscarriages are such a taboo topic in our society because they are the trifecta of the three things that we are the most uncomfortable to speak about. And that is sex, periods, and death all together.
Right.
Resonated so much. It's true.
Yeah.
So after that loss, I was really, all I wanted was to be pregnant. I was so frustrated with my body. I was so angry because I didn't understand why this was happening to me. And I took Clomid that I had already had. I must have had it from the fall, like about to start a cycle or something. I can't remember why I already had it, but I took it right after the miscarriage without my doctor knowing or telling me that it's okay to. And we got pregnant with my oldest right after that.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's funny because I was looking back at the dates. She was due November 19th, which meant we got pregnant like 2 weeks after the D&C.
Wow.
So it's incredibly nerve-wracking and anxiety-producing being pregnant after losses.
Right.
It takes a lot of the spontaneity and the joy out of it. It's a lot of fear and living day to day, just not even trusting that everything's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thankfully it was. She was healthy the whole time. It was an easy birth. But I have always been incredibly fearful of having a C-section, and a big draw to the home birth for me was getting as far away from the operating room as possible. It's funny because still to this day, I have a fear of C-sections. Even having had twins, I was paranoid of having to have a C-section.
Yeah.
So my water broke with Caroline a week before her due date. I was actually at a massage that my mom had booked for me because she could see that I needed to relax a little bit. And I felt something wet. And I was like, I know I didn't just pee myself, which happened a lot for me at the end of my pregnancy.
Yes.
But I went to the doctor, and my mom actually shied me away from going because she said they're probably going to say your water broke and they're probably going to recommend that you stay. And because you're not in active labor, she just knows the cascade of events that can lead you down, forcing your body into delivering before it's ready. And she was trying to protect me and wanted to shy me away from it. But I was so impatient to meet my daughter that I was like, I'm going to the hospital. We're having a baby. Let's get there. And I went that Monday night, and I didn't realize what contractions in labor would feel like as a first-time mom. So I thought I was in active labor when I was in early labor. And so I walked the halls of that hospital and laid there all night, wondering when she would come. And the next morning, the nurses told me I was only 2 centimeters dilated. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I was exhausted at that point, and they offered me to start some Pitocin. And I said, whatever is going to get here sooner. So we started a Pitocin, And I actually was able to take a nap, and I ended up getting an epidural with her, which I actually found incredibly relaxing. Having been so tired from the night before, and with the Pitocin, which makes your contractions so much more intense, I found the epidural able to allow me to be present for her birth.
Oh, great.
So it's funny because I didn't actually expect to get one, but in retrospect, for her birth, I was really glad I did because I was able to be really calm. She actually was born in 2 pushes at 2:30 on November 11th. She was the only baby born that day. She had the whole hospital to herself.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought having an 11:11 baby was really special.
That is very special. Yeah.
They placed her right on my chest, and she immediately started nursing, which was a huge surprise to me. I
Oh, wow.
didn't
Yeah.
think about what would happen, but I also didn't know that they would have me nurse her instantly after birth. Like, I don't know what I thought, but I remember being like, there's no milk in there. Like, you're going to have her nursed. Then the nurses were really sweet, and they explained to me that her sucking is going to help bring the milk.
Yeah. Yeah. And so did they initiate that nursing, or did they put her on your chest and kind of wait for her to initiate that?
So they put her on my chest, and I remember immediately she started rooting towards my breast, and the nurses were kind of telling me, that's good. Like, let's get her on there, and encouraging that that's a great thing, and let's have her do that.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. And it hurt a little bit. I remember one of my best friends telling me the first 2 weeks are going to hurt a lot, and it's going to get better from there. So it did hurt a little bit at first, but nothing bad. We were able to nurse and sleep through the first night. And I remember the nurse coming in my room the next morning in the where you go in the after, not the delivery room, but the room they transition you to. And she goes, wow, your milk came in. And I looked down, and overnight, I think my breast had grown 2 sizes, because I'm a very small chested woman to begin with. I'm about a 34A, and overnight I had gone up to a C cup when the milk came in, which was very interesting for me. And she just nursed so easily. She latched easily. She was able to express the milk and fill her stomach and be satisfied after eating. It just seemed really easy. And
how did you know that she was transferring milk and that she was satisfied? What were those things you were looking for?
So at that point, I wasn't looking. I think I'm, in retrospect, having had a baby that wasn't satisfied, I see, wow, she was really satisfied. She wasn't fussy between feedings, really. She seemed very content after feeding and would often nap after nursing. And I didn't know you were supposed to, what do they say to do now? Eat, play, sleep. I always let my kids nurse to sleep because they got so milk drunk afterwards. It seemed such a natural thing to let them just take a nap afterwards.
Yeah. There are some people who say that, although many breastfeeding advocates say that that is not the best approach when it comes to protecting milk supply.
Is to not let them
they eat, play, sleep idea.
Oh, that's not good for protecting milk supply.
Yeah, you say, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but different people do what's right, what feels best for their families, right? There's no should. But when you say, you know, oh, what do they say now? Eat, play, sleep. I just like to mention that, yes, some people say that, but it's not always aligned with the best breastfeeding advice.
Well, that's good to know. Maybe that's part of why I didn't have any issues with her. Yeah, we did a lot of skin to skin. We co-slept with her, so she would nurse through the night. I baby wore her a lot. She was always in the ergo, and I would just let her nurse in it. So she was on me and on my breasts a lot, which I'm sure helped my milk supply stay up with her. That it's funny, it didn't cross my mind to pump. I really was under the impression then that because I was a stay-at-home mom, that I didn't need to pump. That pumping was for women that went back to work or were away from their babies. It was a misconception. But I don't think I did own a breast pump, but I never used it because we got one through our insurance company, but I was too scared to figure out how to use it. So it was wonderful to not have any concern for supply or any concern. But I did struggle with raw bleeding nipples after about a week. So for a short time, I remember meeting with the lactation consultant because I thought there must have been something off with her latch because it hurt so much for her to latch. And once she was on, that pain sort of dissipates, but them getting on is like knives. I don't know if you can relate to that feeling. It's like
Yes.
the worst pain for a few seconds, and then you're like, okay, I'm good. Just don't move. Just
Right.
get the milk. Yeah. So
Yeah.
got
So what
eased
did you
after a few
do?
weeks. So they had me try a nipple shield. I couldn't do it. I didn't like it. It felt weird. She was gagging on it. It felt very unnatural. And we tried some different nipple creams, and they gave me the thing that worked the best. I can't remember the name of them, but they were from Medela, and they're these little square sticky patches that they had me stick in the refrigerator, and then you stick them on your nipples, and they just soothe so much. So I would put those on between feedings.
And they were cold?
They were cold, yeah.
Okay.
But I remember them shying me away from using them too much because they don't let air get on the damaged tissue. So you don't want to wear them too often and then not let your cuts heal.
Yeah. So, did you do anything to try to change the latch or anything like that after you noticed how damaged your nipples were, or did it just resolve on its own?
A little bit of both. I think more time helped my nipples get a little bit tougher and used to it, but the lactation consultant showed me how to make that C grab on your boob to really get it deeper in the back of the baby's mouth, like get her to latch deeper. And that helped a lot. I think a misconception I had prior to having my own children was that babies just nurse on your nipple, like their mouth only closes over like the areola and the part that sticks out on your nipple. But I didn't realize they actually take a lot of your breast in their mouth too. So I didn't realize to put more of it in their mouth. And that was really, it was strange for me at first because I had no idea. You see a baby bottle that you see in the store, and the nipple is so small that you think that's all the baby would take of your breast in their mouth as well.
Right.
So that helped a lot, was putting more in her mouth.
And did you receive help from lactation professionals at all, or from peer support groups, or your mom? Who are you getting that support from to kind of learn that information?
There was free lactation support from the hospital that I delivered at. My mom was also a great resource when I needed her, but she would only offer help if I asked. She's always been incredibly respectful, making sure that I initiate the help and she's not putting her 2 cents in where it's not wanted. So sometimes I just didn't know to ask. Yeah. But it's tough when you don't know what or that you even need help.
Yeah. So after about, so you said you noticed, or it got pretty bad around 2 weeks. And then at what point did you feel like it resolved?
Probably around a month. So there was probably 2 weeks where I was like, this is really bad. And I don't remember thinking I want to give up though. I just remember thinking I need to find a way through this and it will get better, because I did have friends and I just read. It really did. I didn't have any issues after that. I think I had mastitis with her towards the beginning, and that was it.
Oh, wow. So what did you do to resolve the mastitis?
So the mastitis was, we were actually on a list to triathlons. And the island only has one, and it's open on Saturdays, not Sundays.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I told me if you get cats, you can put them on, and that really helps. Because I'm trying to think, I don't remember taking antibiotics for that, or maybe I did when I got home. I should have recalled that, but I remember panicking, leaving his race, trying to get to the one grocery store on the island to search for cabbage. And they're looking at me in the grocery store like, why do you need a cabbage on a Saturday?
Right. Why is it so important? Right.
Yeah. But I remember having to find cabbage leaves for that mastitis.
Okay.
And I'm really sorry. I don't remember getting the prescription for antibiotics or not. I'm sure maybe once we got home from the trip, I followed up with my doctor.
Yeah. How do you know that how did you know you had mastitis at that time?
It was incredibly painful. My breast was sore and I could feel a hard, like a clogged milk duct in it. You can feel that. And I'm trying to remember if I spiked a fever with having mastitis that time. Of course, my more recent bouts of mastitis are more fresh in my mind. I'm having trouble remembering.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I think that really hard red spot in your breast.
Yeah.
Then you look in the mirror and it's like glowing red.
Yeah. And how old was it's Caroline? How old was Caroline at that point?
She was 3 months old.
Okay, 3 months old. And then did you notice any dip in supply or any fuss? Was she any fussier after that?
I don't remember having any dip in supply or fussiness, but I do remember trying to nurse her more on the side that was painful because I'd heard that can break the clog up and help your breast heal faster.
Okay. Anything else relevant about her story? You have so many. I want to make sure we get to them all.
I know. No, I breastfed her. When she became a year, I had it in my mind that I wanted to start having another baby. And I wasn't cycling while I breastfed her at all. So my doctor told me I would most likely have to wean Caroline if we wanted to conceive again. And I remember that being a really hard decision because I didn't want to wean my baby. So I gave it a little bit longer. I think we went until 15 months. And then I just said, I'm sorry, girl. I want to have another baby. So the last time I nursed Caroline stands out in my head so beautifully because we were sitting in her bedroom one morning and the sun was rising and she was just so sweet. And it was really memorable just watching the sunrise and knowing in my mind that this would be the last time I nursed her.
Oh, wow. And did you slowly, reduce sessions or?
I did.
Okay.
So around a year, I decided we were going to night wean her because I was sick of waking up in the night to feed her. And that was really, really easy because she slept in the bed with my husband and I. And when she liked sleeping on my husband, but she'd wake up and find me just to nurse and then go back to sleeping with my husband. So what I did was when she would wake up in the night, because moms can know and feel everything. The second I would feel her stirring before she would quite wake up, I would jump out of bed and run into the living room. And, oh, mommy wasn't there. Okay. And it took about 3 nights. It was so easy. She was so easy to night wean that 3 nights of daddy telling her mommy's not here. And she just went back to sleep on him. And she didn't ask after that.
Wow.
So that was, I don't know how she was so easy because my other children were not. So
yeah, I know when people tell me stories like that, and then they're talking about having a second or something, or, their first was easy.
Yes.
In certain ways, temperamentally, I'll say that is amazing. I'm so glad that was your experience. Just know it's often not the case for every baby you have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I hope that it is for you,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So by 15 months, it's so sweet that you have a final memory of breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I definitely don't. I remember final, oldest, and my youngest is 4.5 and still breastfeeding. I kind of wish I had a final moment with her, but that's another story.
Yeah. She's the only child I do, though, for some reason. I don't remember with the other ones.
Yeah. And I talk to so many people, I do remember. And then I talk to so many people who say, it just happened so gradually and so gently that I don't remember. They just stopped asking and I stopped offering. Yeah.
I think that's how most milestones disappear with children, is they just fade away and you don't remember. So with conceiving my second child, I was in a fairly depleted state and I didn't realize it. My hypothalamic amenorrhea was so suppressed that I wasn't responding to Clomid or Letrozole like I was prior to Caroline. So when your hypothalamus is that suppressed, you actually need to do injectables. So injectable gonadotropins. So to get your follicles to grow, and then you do a shot to get your body to ovulate. And then we do timed intercourse at home. So we didn't need to do IUI or IVF. May of 2015, we got pregnant with Caitlin.
Okay, so with Caitlin, did you have any different expectations about breastfeeding once you had experienced it one time while you were pregnant?
I did.
Okay.
I thought for sure breastfeeding was easy, piece of cake. You don't have to think about it. You just, your boobs are just there to make milk for you whenever you need them to.
Okay, so I have a feeling this is a setup for what might have happened.
This is my most difficult breastfeeding story.
Okay.
So during Caitlin's pregnancy, I was not in the healthiest mindset. I don't think I consumed enough calories to meet my energy needs and the baby's energy needs. So she ate a lot of my energy stores. So when I gave birth to her, I hadn't put on much weight. I want to say I don't have the exact number, probably only gained about 10 pounds that pregnancy, which is not healthy.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this, but when I delivered her, I was quite thin and very emotionally depleted because I had been in prodromal labor for about 5 weeks. And I remember telling my doctor and my mom that I don't care if the baby's healthy. I am not mentally stable. Like, I can't do this anymore. I need the baby out and I need her.
Yeah.
I need this to stop, because we kept thinking I was going into labor and then it would just stop. Completely stop, which is messes with your brain so much.
Yeah.
So Caitlin actually was being monitored for IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction.
Yes.
She never met the criteria for being small enough to deliver early, thankfully, but they were watching her because she was continuously like under the 20th percentile for growth.
Yeah.
And my babies generally measure small with the fundal height because I have an extremely long torso and my babies sit very low and posterior in my pelvis. So Caroline was a normal size. Caroline was 6 pounds, 13 ounces, I believe. I should have wrote their sizes down. Caitlin was 5 pounds, 10 ounces. I might be mixing their ounces up. So she was a peanut. She was healthy. She was breathing. Her color was in her. Her APGAR was fine. I don't remember what it was, but I remember it being fine. And we delivered at the same hospital. They again put her right up to my breast. She nursed right away. My milk came in, no problem. And I actually didn't know anything was wrong with my breastfeeding journey with her until I went in for my 2-month checkup for Caitlin. And the pediatrician was looking at her and he was like, I think she's hungry, because she was very, very fussy and she was asking to eat like every hour, night and day. And I could not figure out why this child wanted to nurse so much. And the pediatrician said, if you don't mind, let me try giving her a bottle. They have those little like pre-made formula bottles at the pediatrician. And I said, that's fine. Like, let's just see if that's what's wrong or whether we need to figure out what else is wrong with her. And that poor child sucked the entire bottle down right in the room while we were there. And the pediatrician said she's hungry. That's why she wants to eat so much. That's why she wants to keep nursing so much. And she's so fussy, the poor kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that mentally was very, I don't want to say depleting. It made me feel like, wow, I'm not providing for my child and my body can't do this. And in the back of my mind, I'm saying, I knew my body couldn't do this, and here it is. So it's funny because I did not have the desire to pump or take herbs or cluster feed or any of those strategies they tell you can do to increase your supply. It's almost like because I was so physically depleted, my brain energy was also depleted, and I just didn't have the stamina or the desire to do that, which I look back now and it's kind of sad because I am in a different place after my twin breastfeeding journey. But it just is where I was at with her, and I actually started supplementing with formula, and it felt like a huge weight off my shoulders because my baby was finally happy and she was fed, and it took a lot of the demand off of me, which I actually think my body needed at that point, sadly.
Yeah,
So we
and
switched to
also
formula with
it
her.
sounds like you struggled a little more mental health wise, even at the end of the pregnancy. So, to have the extra stress of worrying about your baby, I can imagine that just knowing that your baby was going to be fine could lift that stress.
It did, absolutely. And the biggest thing about mental health, which is difficult, is from my experience, you don't know you're struggling.
Right.
Because it's difficult to compare the way you're feeling now to the way you were feeling when you were feeling good, if you ever had a time that you were feeling good. I know some people might not, but it's hard to know you're in a tough place. And I look back from now and think, oh my goodness, like I was struggling so much and I didn't know it. I didn't know I was depleted. I didn't see myself as thin. You don't realize it. And I probably didn't want to hear my mom tell me or my doctor tell me. I don't even know if they were telling me. I'm sure they were, but it's interesting. So I think my supply dried up pretty quick when we started supplementing with formula with her. And I was okay with it at that moment, which is funny because it's not me now, but she was my little formula baby. And the greatest blessing about Caitlin is she actually got 2 years of breast milk, because when I started feeding my twins, I had extra and I gave it to her and she loved it. She would ask for a bottle. So she, in the end, got her over a year of breastfeeding, which was nice.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell me, once you start on formula with her, did you receive any support on how you could both formula feed so that her needs were met and protect your supply? Was that ever a discussion with your pediatrician or with other support people, lactation support people or peer support groups, or did you feel like the right move for you was just to focus on the baby and not worry about your supply?
So I think if I was looking for any of that, it would have been given to me or very easy to find. But I really feel like I didn't want to hear it. And I feel like the word that's coming to mind is that I just gave up. I just waved the white flag and said, I don't want to do this. I think I wanted to just formula feed her. And the biggest tip I would have for a mom that's switching to formula, because I made a big mistake with Caitlin and I often wouldn't continue to bond like you do when you're breastfeeding a baby when I was giving her a bottle. I didn't use that time to look into her eyes and bond with the baby and hold her and just be that one-on-one with her. And I didn't realize I wasn't doing that until she was older, and it was, you can't get that time back because it's very easy to prop a bottle up and go empty the dishwasher or go put that extra load of laundry in, or you do that day after day and you don't realize you don't get that time back.
Right.
And I definitely regret not bonding with her while giving her a bottle. I wish I would have treated bottle feeding as if I was breastfeeding her.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So there's so much information out there about paced and whether somebody is on formula or breast milk, whether somebody's giving their baby formula or breast milk. And the point of that is not only to kind of slow down the experience for the baby so that they can start to learn their hunger signals, but also to mimic that experience of what it's like for the baby at the breast so that they do get all those neural pathways being built. Even if they're not actually at the breast, that comes from the eye contact and the snuggles and the looking at each other.
Yeah.
Things that we know are great. And I want to say you were a mom doing the best you could in that moment. And we all have those moments when we look back and think, oh man, I wish I would have done that differently. And I think, I know as a parent that the stakes get higher, right? We make bigger and bigger mistakes when it comes to the emotional well-being of our kids. And it sounds like you were managing your own mental health at the time. And it could be that at the time, what you needed was to have the dishwasher emptied or, the laundry folded.
Having a control over my home environment was definitely a way that I relieved stress in that moment.
Yeah.
And I did
especially because, oh, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I did it at the cost of bonding with Caitlin as a baby, sadly.
Yeah. Well, we evolved in large social groups where it was not left to just one adult to care for children all day long. There were multiple people who would hold the baby constantly, pass them back and forth, they're live today more like what early humans used to live, where that is still the case, right? That, a person has a baby, but then there are maybe between 5 and 12 adults who are constantly caring for that baby. And it's not left to just one person. And so when we are now in this social structure where we are left by ourselves with children all day long, sometimes we have a partner around, but most often family leave in our country is not such that we can, have that support for very long. It does mean that sometimes we have to make choices that allow us to have our own sanity. That might not be in the best interest of the baby, but long-term, it might be in the best interest of the baby because we are sane.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a lot of those parenting decisions that aren't your favorite. I feel like you only notice in retrospect.
Right.
That in the moment, you're not noticing, oh, I shouldn't have done that until much later. So if that could help any mom know that really to still spend that time if you can.
Yeah, right. And if you didn't, release it. Right. Both. Yeah.
So during that time with Caitlin, I was completely okay with my decision to formula feed, and I didn't miss breastfeeding at all with her. We tried again, and we had another miscarriage, sadly, when Caitlin had just turned 1. I'll never forget coming home that day, and my husband didn't really ask how it went, the ultrasound, and I was really emotional. I was like, you didn't even ask how it went. He's like, you said it went fine. I was like, but you didn't ask me about it. And I wanted to show him the video. That's what it was.
Right.
I said, I took a video for you. Don't you want to see? He's like, okay, fine. Like, he's thinking they all look the same. They're all this tiny little beam.
Number 3. We've done this before.
Yeah, and it's just this tiny little like flickering, like there's nothing there yet. He likes the 12-week one where they look like a little person, like wiggling around and kicking. So I show him, and in my video, I go, so that's baby A, and I point to it, and I point to the other one and go, and that's baby B, and his jaw dropped. He's like, what? So
wow.
I still, after so many losses, don't know how my body was able to grow 2 babies at the same time, healthfully, but I am forever grateful. We got a huge runaround with the twin pregnancy because we were with my fertility clinic. You get discharged at your first ultrasound, and that was at 7 weeks. And I called my regular OB, and she said that I will not see you for a twin pregnancy. You have to go to maternal fetal medicine. So they sent me to a different hospital system, to a maternal fetal medicine specialist, in which case they said, you're not high risk just because you're twins. You can go back to a regular OB.
Oh, no.
So I couldn't go back to the OB that didn't want to see me. I said, well, if she doesn't want to treat me, I'm not going to go back to her. We need to find a new one. So we found a new OB, and finally around 20 weeks, I was with someone that would care for me.
Wow.
So quite the runaround. And they recommended that we deliver the twins at a different hospital that has a NICU available just in case. And it was a good thing we did, because we ended up delivering early and needing the NICU. So when I was 27 weeks pregnant with the twins, I was having a lot of contractions, a lot of Braxton Hicks. So I went into triage, and they monitored me for a while, and they said, you're about 1.5, maybe 2 centimeters dilated, a lot of Braxton Hicks, but you're fine, you can go home. I was like, really? And my mom, she tells me now, and I don't remember her being appalled at the time, but she told me she was biting her tongue and letting me have my own doctor, because she knows that she's not my doctor. But she was quite annoyed that they didn't tell me pelvic rest or modified rest or any type of, because I'm still quite active. I wasn't running through the twins pregnancy, but I was very active with the girls, and I would take long walks, which does stimulate your cervix to dilate more.
Right.
And at 32 weeks, I remember, I don't know if this is TMI, but maybe someone would like to know. My husband and I were intimate, and that night, in the middle of the night, I woke up to use the restroom, and I was just gushing blood. I was like, this is not good. So I told my husband, I said, I have to go into the hospital in the morning. And it's funny, I drove my own self to the hospital every time I've delivered. I ended up driving myself. So I go into the hospital the next morning, not knowing I'm going to stay. He stayed home with our girls. And I get there, and they bring me to triage. And the nurse that checked me, her face, I will never forget her face. She's like, you're 6 centimeters dilated. I was like, what? This is not good. I was 32 plus 4. So it was a Wednesday. I was 32 weeks, 4 days.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're staying. Get comfy. They were born naturally in the OR. They were born on that Friday at 1:01 and 1:10. And it's funny because this birth, the babies were so small that, I mean, all my babies came out fairly easily, but Logan, my son, came out first, and he was 4 pounds, 3 ounces. And then Alexis came out, and she was 3 pounds, 3 ounces. So she was a little peanut.
Yeah.
They let me see each baby. They kind of held them up to me, but they immediately gave them to the NICU teams.
Okay.
And they're too little to nurse. So it was a very different experience, where they don't put the babies right on your chest and let you nurse.
Yeah.
And I would love to see what they do with a term twin pregnancy. Like if they put both babies on the mom's chest and let them both nurse, or how that works. Because with the twins, they went right up to the NICU, and they were given feeding tubes in their nose, because developmentally and motor coordination wise, they don't have the suck swallow reflex strong enough to actually feed through their mouth. So they had to go on a feeding tube until they were 34 weeks gestation. So they talk to you in terms of weeks of gestation until they would reach their due date age.
Okay. So can you talk to me about the feeding, what was being provided to them in the feeding tubes?
So they gave me a choice. They said, we have donor milk, you can pump, or we can feed them formula. And I was in a very different mindset this time. I was very determined to breastfeed them for whatever reason, from having a completely okay not breastfeeding my baby situation to a extremely determined to breastfeed my baby situation.
Yeah.
All my doctors and health professionals were preparing me ahead of time that it was a near impossible to breastfeed twins. They said we need to set your expectations straight, that it is usually not possible to breastfeed exclusively your twins. You'll most likely end up supplementing, and we just want to make sure you know the expectation going into it. And I didn't do a lot of research on breastfeeding twins. I, for some reason, just felt very confident that I was going to do this. And I don't know if it was a little bit of my inner competitive athlete coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, you can't tell me I can't breastfeed my babies type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being in that very lonely room after delivering them, because I'm in there. My husband is with my daughters. I'm all alone. My babies are in the NICU. Then they were so full at this hospital. I did not like delivering at this hospital. They had a fabulous NICU, but my care, I felt extremely neglected. Nobody told me that your contractions after birth can be worse than your contractions before birth.
Yeah.
And that they get worse with each child. I wasn't aware that, with subsequent births, they're stronger and stronger and stronger. So I was in a lot of discomfort in asking for some Tylenol or Motrin, whatever they give you, and the nurse just wasn't coming. And they also brought me a hospital grade pump and showed me how to use it. And they gave me a few eyedroppers, because at this point, I remember hooking up to that pump, and at the end of a pumping session, just getting enough where I could eyedropper it up, like suction it up, like a few milliliters.
Yeah.
And just crying, because I'm like, it's never gonna come. Like, where is my milk? I'm getting in like a milliliter or two. And we would send that up to the NICU, and my husband was actually incredibly reassuring, which I really pride him on, because he often isn't fabulous with words, like reassuring words.
Yeah.
He was so sweet. He sat there and eyedroppered up those few little drops of colostrum to bring to the babies, and he said, "It's okay, honey. Any is better than none. Like 2 drops is better than none. Like whatever you can give." I'm getting teary-eyed thinking of this.
I know. Yeah.
So he brought them those few little eyedroppers up in the NICU, and I kept at that hospital grade pump. I don't remember getting a lot of initial instruction on how long of frequency and duration I should use it to bring my milk supply in, because my previous experiences, I only really had my baby to breast. I didn't use a pump. My first experience was with this hospital grade pump, but I would pump for up to 50 minutes at a time.
Whoa.
Every 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I would do like 10 minutes on and 10 minutes off, 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. I asked to be discharged the very next day rather than staying. I think they wanted me to stay another day, but they couldn't keep me at the hospital just because my twins were there. They were separate. Like, you can be discharged and your babies can stay.
Yes.
I also wanted to get home to my girls. They weren't allowed at the hospital.
Right.
Not because of COVID, but because it was flu season. This was January 25th, 2019. They were born 5 days before my daughter turned 2.
Okay.
So for 5 days, I had 3 under 2.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool to say, which is crazy. So I went home, and I remember getting discharged on the Saturday, the next day. So I loved the pump that I had with them. I kept up that every 2 hours pumping for about 45 to 50 minutes, which I know is probably a lot and not what they'd recommend, but I was really scared to not have enough milk for them. I think I had a lot of guilt for them being born early, and I just felt like my milk might help them longer and give them some nutrients. So every time I'd go visit them at the NICU, I would bring a whole cooler full of milk. And at one point, they told me I need to stop bringing it in because they have way more than these guys are going to have to eat.
Yeah. And did they ever talk?
Sweet.
Did they ever talk to you about when we counsel brand new moms, or brand new parents, we always remind them, the size of a newborn baby's tummy, which, a term baby's tummy is about the size of a cherry, which is why those first drops of colostrum before the mature milk comes in is enough in those first few days, as long as you're feeding just around the clock at the first signs of hunger. So did they ever talk to you about the size of a 30 tummy and how much they should be, how much a breastfed baby needs in that, at every feeding?
I don't remember them ever giving me the comparison to a cherry or to something that my brain could understand, because if I was at the hospital, I could see how many milliliters the feeds that they were tolerating are, but I don't think I ever equated that to how much milk in ounces that I was pumping and that they were getting in a 24-hour period. I knew they fed them every 3 hours, and I can't remember at this point how many milliliters they were tolerating, but they never put it into terms that would be a little bit easier for me to understand how much milk I should be bringing them. It's almost like I just brought them as much as I could.
Right. Yeah. And were you able to touch them, hold them, provide any kangaroo care, or were they
they'd always let me put my hands in the isolate. So Alexis was in a covered isolate, and she was a little bit smaller. So they would let me touch her, but they would remind me that unlike a term baby, touch isn't necessarily comforting to them, that it actually can stimulate them and make them a little anxious. It's a little bit jostling to their nervous system to be handled and touched, because they're used to being in the womb at that size. So they would let me hold them. I was looking forward to very much trying nursing with them, and that was at 34 weeks. So I had to wait a whole week until I could try nursing with them. Even Logan, who was a little bit bigger, they needed to wait till 34 weeks. But I remember holding him more, maybe because he was a little bigger. Luckily, they did great. Logan was on a CPAP for a few hours, and that was it, or one overnight, and that was it. And Alexis was never on a CPAP, so they both tolerated oxygen. They didn't need medical intervention other than the feeding tubes and to just grow. They were too little to be able to feed themselves. But I remember nursing them each for the first time. It was such a sweet experience. Alexis, I have a picture of it. Her head was only about as big as my breast. She was very tiny. And she was such a champ. She ate her full feed. So they weigh the baby before and after to see how much milk they get. And she took more than the feeds they had been giving her. So they were so happy. She was such a champ. And Logan did awesome nursing as well. He got a little more fatigued. So she actually was a stronger nurser than him in the beginning, even though she was a pound lighter.
Yeah.
So I continued to keep up my nursing at home, and pretty soon my milk supply was getting quite robust to the point where I realized I had enough to give Caitlin. So she started probably getting milk on her second birthday, enough where she had maybe a couple bottles a day.
Oh, wow.
I figured out the ounces once. I think I was getting about 50 ounces a day. I'll have to go back and look for you.
From pumping?
You wanted it for you. From pumping, yeah.
Because at this point, the babies are still at the NICU, and you're still pumping whenever you were away from baby, and then from the babies. And then when you NICU, were you able to nurse them while you were there, or were they trying to preserve their energy? And so that was now and then.
So I'd only make it to the NICU once a day. It was really difficult to find childcare for my girls because my husband didn't take his paternity leave yet. He was saving it for when we brought the babies home.
Yes.
And ironically and simultaneously, my grandmother was passing away at the same hospital that I delivered at. So my mom wasn't available because she was with my grandmother. Yeah. So I relied on my mom's club They were amazing. They chipped in and helped me watch my girls for these little 3-hour chunks every day.
Wow.
So I had just enough time to drive my girls to a friend's house, get to the hospital, do one feeding with the babies, and get back.
Mm-hmm.
And the nurses, some of them could be a little rude at times and imply that I should be there longer stretches of time.
Mm-hmm.
One nurse even said when we were getting close to discharge that I need to be there longer so I can get a little more accustomed to their care. And I'm thinking, it's not that I don't want to care for my babies that I'm not here. It's just I can't bring my girls here. It's very
Right.
difficult to get here, but
Right. Yeah.
I
I'm so
knew I
sorry
would
you
be.
experienced that
Thank you.
judgment. Yeah.
But we were very lucky. They told me to assume that the babies would be in the NICU at until about their due date, which was
Mm-hmm.
March 16th.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in there at January 25th. So we got really lucky. They were
Wow.
progressing really
Yeah.
well. And they came home on Valentine's Day. So they were
Oh.
there for only 3 weeks.
Yeah.
My little guys. I was gonna say, so they came home on Valentine's Day, and we immediately switched to breastfeeding
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible.
Now,
My
were they being?
philosophy.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Were they being fed bottles at all, or was it all?
Yes.
Okay.
So at 34 weeks, when they tolerated the breast and they tried them on bottles, it went really well, and they were able to take out their feeding tubes and switch to just bottle feeding.
Okay. Okay.
I should have said that. So they were tolerating all their bottles, it was very interesting to me because they were getting bottles of my breast milk, and I had never done that. I had only ever given formula by bottle or my
Mm-hmm.
breast milk
Mm-hmm.
by my breast.
Mm-hmm.
But this was new to me to give breast milk through a bottle.
Yeah. And do you remember the
So,
ounce sizes that they were getting in a bottle?
I think they were teensy little bottles. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
the ounces. I want to say 2 ounces.
Yeah. Yeah. I ask because, we have this idea when we're first starting out that we have to have a lot of milk in a bottle for new babies. And really,
Yeah.
it's not a lot.
Well, the bottles you buy in a store are so big. They're like
Right.
10 ounces.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the bottles they give you at the NICU to pump into are 2, maybe 4 ounces. They're tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And it sets a better realistic expectation for how much milk you need to provide them.
Yeah.
Because the ones at Target are for like a 1-year-old. They're
Right.
really big.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that, a baby that is fed, a lot of our feeding guidelines are based on formula fed babies because that was the norm for so many decades in the
Right.
United States. But the composition of breast milk itself changes to meet the growing needs of a baby. So you never really, most breastfed babies, now this is based on averages, right? So some breastfed babies need a lot less, some need a lot more, and it's circumstantial as well, whether or not you're able to feed based on their cues and not based on a schedule. But, most breastfed babies will never need more than 3 to 4 ounces in a sitting. Because the composition itself changes. Whereas with formula, you add more and more and more because their caloric intake increases.
Yeah. And what's interesting, anecdotally, so Caitlin was my only baby that ever had formula, and the amount of urine that child would produce is out of this world. She would pee through overnight diapers before she was even a year old.
Wow.
I don't know if it's just because formula, like you said, maybe it was more watered down than what my breastfed babies would take in to get the same nutrients, but it was very different. So out of the 3 children that were breastfed, it's just an astronomical difference from the amount of diapers they would fill.
Yeah.
Funny. So it could be unrelated, but I've just always been amazed by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you have them home and now you're switching to mostly breastfeeding, or were you doing a combination of both breast and bottle?
So I kept up a combination. I think I was always scared of what all my healthcare professionals were telling me, that I'm not going to make enough milk to feed them. And I was determined to. So I would often hook up my pump after nursing them just to stimulate myself to make more, or
Mm-hmm.
to top myself off and just collect anything that the baby's left behind. My best friend was my Haka, the little tool that you suction onto your opposite breast to catch the
Mm-hmm.
letdown. And sometimes I would choose to feed the babies separately and use the Haka on my other breast to sort of, uh, again, stimulate myself to make more. Not out of ease or convenience or out
Mm-hmm.
of being scared my letdown would wet my shirt, but deliberately out of really trying to tell my body make more milk. Because the easiest thing to do
Right.
was to
Yeah.
tandem feed. I found that I loved tandem feeding them. It was the easiest, it
Mm-hmm.
was efficient. I loved that all three of us were snuggling at the same time, and
Mm-hmm.
they fed really well that way. I
Yeah.
didn't have like one breast for one child and one breast for the other. I really just would switch off, but I didn't keep track of it either. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe sometimes one baby would be on the same two in a row. I wasn't the type of mom that liked to keep track of bowel movements, wet diapers, how many ounces they got, how many hours they slept, or
Mm-hmm.
really just liked to go intuitively with what it looked like the baby needed at that time.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting transition home because they were on a very rigid schedule at the NICU, and we transitioned to a really go with the flow. They were not identical twins, they are fraternal twins, so they are very separate babies with
Mm-hmm.
separate needs, and they're
Mm-hmm.
separate sizes.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't always wake up at the same time. A lot of what you read online says you need to wake your baby up when one wakes up so that they stay on the same schedule, and that just always felt, that didn't feel right to me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that's wrong to any mom that chooses to do that at all, but it really felt more intuitive and natural to go with what each baby wanted. So sometimes that was going a 4 hour stretch right away at night for one baby, while the other one was kind of waking up every hour or two. And that was okay. That's when I would use that Haka on the other one to try to keep from one breast
Okay. Yeah.
being told it needed milk 4 times a night and the other one only being told twice in that night.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering the difference in your mind between having both babies on breast or using the Haka, but because their schedules were different, that's why you relied on using the Haka.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes they would coincide.
Mm-hmm.
They would probably coincide more often than not. I would tandem feed them more
Mm-hmm.
than I would single feed them.
Mm-hmm.
But the Haka was a very convenient way to
Yes.
get a good amount of ounces out
Mm-hmm.
without having to, I don't like the pump. I mean, it was an amazing tool to use, but it's not fun. It's
Yeah.
not fun to be
Yeah.
hooked up to
Right.
it.
Yeah.
This might be helpful for another mom. I didn't realize at first. So going into breastfeeding, I I have fairly small nipples, but with the breast pump use of the twins, my nipple size actually grew,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed a larger diameter. They called flanges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one lactation consultant that I saw a few weeks after they were born at the hospital, she was fabulous. And she pointed out that when your nipples are rubbing the side of your flange, that's what's creating some of that irritation. Because I actually lost the entire skin off the top of my nipple about 2 weeks into them being born.
Mm.
The whole thing just peeled off like one big blister.
Oh no.
And I was a little scared of what would be under it, but luckily it was fine. It was new skin. I
Mm-hmm.
got really lucky. But we went up a size, and what a difference that made. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't painful to pump anymore.
Yeah.
And if that can help anybody else who's having pain while they're pumping, it is worth
Yeah.
it.
Phalange size really matters. What I have found, though, is that most often the opposite is true, is that people think their breasts are so large that compared to what they used to be, that they end up
Right.
using a bigger size than what they need. And most frequently, they need to go down in sizes, even down in sizes beyond what is provided with the pump. And most pump suppliers have other sizes that you can order. And some insurance companies will cover one other set. But it's good to work with a lactation professional to make sure you're getting the right size. And sometimes what will happen is the breast tissue, the areola, if the areola will get sucked in and kind of swell up and will rub on the side of the tunnel. And so then pump users will think, oh, my nipple is rubbing, and get a bigger size, and the problem gets worse when actually it's the areola rubbing and they needed a smaller size.
That makes
so the
sense.
moral of the story is it's really good
always
to have a lactation professional helping you look, someone who has seen many nipples inside of many phalanges and knows what the sizing looks like. Because if you're wondering, am I wearing the right size? It's really good to get to help you determine, is it the right size or not?
Yes, incredibly helpful. And not all lactation consultants think to look at you pump or check if that's the right size. So it's always good to know that you can ask, and that is a thing.
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So how long did it take? And we're this is a much longer episode than most, but you have so many interesting and diverse stories. So I'm so happy to hear them all. But I would, as we kind of need to wrap up a little bit, I would like to know, how long did it take before it felt normal, quote normal, to be nursing 2 babies?
Very soon after they came home.
Okay.
So it didn't set in yet that I was nursing 2 babies while they were still at the NICU.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really feel like they were my babies until they came home, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, it felt right. And I'm not sure why it happened so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think my mothering instincts were the strongest with the twins. And I don't know if that just comes from being in a healthier headspace or from the knowledge of breastfeeding going really smoothly and then breastfeeding going really not smoothly, and just making a conscious choice that I'll do whatever I can to make this go smooth. But my intuition with the twins was probably my strongest out of all the kids. And it clicked very easily how to position them, what was comfortable. I used my breast friend nursing pillow is the name of it, and it was a lifesaver in the beginning when they're still really new and really floppy. It definitely helps position the babies in a way, because it is really hard at first when they're so little to hold them on the breast 2 at a time.
Yeah.
I found the easiest way to feed them was I would lay one on top of the other so that their bodies were facing the same direction, so that their feet were both kind of going towards one side of my body.
Oh, wow.
And that, I found if their heads were next to each other with their bodies wrapped around either side of me, that they would clunk heads a lot and they were kind of uncomfortable and cranky. And if you do that, you also need a lot of support in the middle of your body where you there isn't much. And like I had mentioned earlier, I have a really long torso, so the normal pillows, the boppy, the just classic tips often still keep my baby a little too far away from me when I'm sitting up. So I need something a little extra under there. So to be able to hold one baby normally and then lay the other baby on top really lifted them both into the perfect position. I could nurse both of them with just one regular couch pillow under one elbow, rather than needing like a whole bunch of pillows.
Yeah. Wow.
It's funny because you'd think that would hurt the bottom baby, but they never, it never seemed to mind. They did very resilient with the
Yeah, and they were probably
with the
comforted.
snuggling.
Yeah, by being close to
Yeah.
each other. Yeah.
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 Nights
So
were the
how old
hardest
are they
though.
now?
Now they just turned 3 the end of January.
They just turned 3. Okay. And you said nights were the hardest.
Nights were the hardest because if you're with one baby and the other one wakes up, you either need someone else to get the other baby or someone else to stay with the first baby in case they wake up when you go get the second baby.
Yeah.
So I would say a lot of nights my poor husband got kicked out of the bed and it was me in the middle with one twin on either side of me.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was, nights were hard. But
Yeah.
I nursed the twins until they were 2 years, 8 months.
Okay.
We weaned this past summer,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have an end date in mind for them. I think the pandemic extended how long I thought I would go, just because we were kind of stuck at home and only together for much longer
Right.
than with my other babies.
Right. Not as
And
busy
also
running around.
yeah, but the immunity played a big deal in my mind too.
Yes.
I had been vaccinated, and once I became vaccinated, it was even more important for me to pass some of those nutrients on to them and give them some of those immunities too.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I I'm not sure what the drive to wean them was this summer. It was a little bit of me having had enough, a little bit of, I don't want to say you're just nursing for comfort because I've always not been a fan of that term, but I mean, they're eating perfectly large, solid meals at this state. They're 2.5 years old.
Right.
They're big. They're over the 50th percentile
Right.
for normal kids their age. So not they don't adjust their size anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So they're big. I mean, Logan weighs 35 pounds. I was like, you're good, bud. I think you're good with
Right.
my
Yeah.
milk.
Right.
I had also heard, which you had spoke to a little bit, that once you get a little bit older, it gets even harder to wean. And I was worrying I was crossing that threshold of that you're just gonna say no. Like
Mm.
if I say no, we're not gonna nurse, and they put up a fight, I didn't want to get into that territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was hard to wean because I've always nursed to sleep. So when they want to go down for a nap or down for bed, I would always nurse them to sleep. And they would share a room. I would usually lay in the middle of them and let them each lay on a side of me and nurse. So the biggest hurdle was figuring out another way to get them down to sleep. And once we transitioned, it's been perfectly fine.
Kasondra, I have had such a blast hearing your stories. And I think more importantly, not only has it been fun, I think you have provided uh, such valuable information, but also support to other people. Knowing that one person had 3 completely different stories.
Yes.
And the intersection of mental health and parenting and feeding and the make because of that, it's so important. It all matters. And I really appreciate you being so open and honest with that, and coming to share your stories with us.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So as we wrap up, I would love to hear any resources that you think helped you to meet your goals, and then
So
but are
Kelly
there
Mom
others?
is a great resource.
Kelly Mom.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Mom
Yes.
was probably the resource I would go to the most because
Mm-hmm.
they just had articles on everything. And it's really tough on the internet nowadays to know what you can trust and what you can't trust. And that site just seemed reputable.
Yes.
So for
Yes.
resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kelly Mom is evidence-based breastfeeding information, and every article just about every article. Some of the older ones don't have linked citations, but most of the more recent articles do have linked citations so that you can kind of go down your own rabbit hole if you want, but you don't have to go down the research rabbit hole because you know that Kelly Mom has done the research.
Yeah, that was really comforting. I would also say that some Facebook groups, if you search for Mom's Club, wherever you're living, your town, or like a consortium of towns, where we were living before, it was like the local 4 towns. They were the group of moms who was helping me with childcare. It would help if you had a random question that you didn't want to quite ask your general Facebook feed, but you weren't sure that your mom or your husband would be the proper person to ask either.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kasondra. This was a blast.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Milk Making Minutes. I hope you found connection and feel supported wherever you are in your baby feeding journey. The views expressed in each interview are deeply personal and sacred, and I'm so grateful to each person who is generous enough to share their story. It is also true that those views are solely theirs and do not necessarily reflect my opinion or advice as a lactation supporter, and this podcast does not qualify as medical advice. If you are struggling to feed your baby, please seek out the support of a local IBCLC.